So what the heck is new urbanism?
Yeah, what is
I
it?
was at an event the other week and people were speaking unfavorably about the new apartments along North College.
No surprise
surprise.
there. Yeah.
And the high-density urbanism that has basically inhabited that part of North College.
Yep.
You know, the buildings that everyone seems to dislike, the
Big
apartments.
Yep.
And someone else said, well, that's new urbanism. So what is new urbanism? And is that statement true? Well, yes and no.
Huh?
See, new urbanism is a city planning philosophy, not an architectural approach necessarily.
All right.
The official definition is new urbanism is an urban design movement which promotes walkable neighborhoods containing a range of housing and job types.
Yada,
It
yada,
arose in
yada.
the United States in the early 1980s and has gradually informed many aspects of real estate development, urban planning, and municipal land use strategies.
Yada, yada,
So,
yada.
new urbanism, in many ways, was a response to the demolish and pave mentality that dominated city planning from 1950 to 1975, when we lost half of our houses and buildings to demolition, and lots that would eventually become paved lots, parking lots, empty lots for cars. Hundreds of old homes and buildings were demolished between 1950 and 1975 to make way for paved lots and deep setback structures like strip stores and malls. So acres of land were made into parking lots, and the buildings were relegated to the background.
What's deep
This
setback?
planning concept is called deep setback.
Oh, okay.
And a long time ago, people like the National Chamber of Commerce thought it was a pretty cool thing, and they advocated for it.
Oh.
Deep setback was mostly created to make way for parking space and featured the paved lot as the main landscape feature.
Yeah.
Here's some examples of deep setback.
Okay.
All right, hit it, guys. Deep setback. 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 Oh, deep setback. Medium setback. Oh, medium. Oh, my bad. Deep setback. Deep setback. Oh no, deep setback. Deep setback. Deep setback. Deep setback. Gonna get yourself a little deep setback.
Come on now.
Deep setback. Oh, deep setback.
Now the Dickie style.
Deep setback.
Come on, get yourself a
Deep setback.
Going 50 style.
Deep setback. A little dip, 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 dip. Don't get your deep setback.
Throw the ball.
Now, new urbanism was a response to this parking lot focused development and said that people, pedestrians, and buildings should be the focus of city planning, not cars and parking lots. And let's face it, who wants to look at acres and acres of paved cement?
Sounds reasonable.
But new urbanism's focus on pedestrians, people, landscape, buildings, etc. doesn't mean that it's an architectural style. It isn't an architectural style,
Right.
nor is there a paint-by-numbers approach to building a new urbanist city or block.
Got it.
Because it's very interpretive, it is possible to employ a new urbanist philosophy and still build an ugly-as-hell building and make poor development decisions. New urbanism is not a magic potion for city planning.
Too bad.
So let's look at some of the features of new urbanism
Okay.
and its philosophy, generally, besides the elimination of deep setback,
All
which
right.
we've already covered. Number one,
Yeah, we did.
we already mentioned that it should be pedestrian friendly. Number two, the building should ideally be used for mixed use.
Okay.
Back in the 1950s, planners decided that there should be a distinct zone for everything. A zone for hospitals, a zone for city buildings, post office, fire stations, police station, a zone for businesses,
Right.
a zone for residential areas, a zone
Okay.
for manufacturing, a zone for hotels.
Got it.
You get the idea.
I do.
No more running your grocery store from the bottom floor and living above.
What?
That was frowned upon.
Oh.
They did all this with good intentions at first, so
I'm
people
sure.
wouldn't have to live next to some stinky, smoke stacking, polluting manufacturing building. But then they took it too far. So far that it pushed many people out of downtown living. It turned whole neighborhoods from residential to commercial. In some cases, whole neighborhoods were claimed by eminent domain and bulldozed to make way for, you guessed it, parking lots. Just take a look at South College Avenue across the street from the convention center, and you'll know exactly what I mean.
That's what
That land has been empty, paved football field for about 50 years
50
now.
years?
It used to be a thriving neighborhood.
Oh.
New urbanists said, hey, enough of that.
Okay.
We're moving back to mixed-use buildings, businesses or offices below and living space above.
Makes
So in
sense.
theory, we're getting back to the old days.
Okay.
Number 3, new urbanism does not feature parking space. Ideally,
Good.
you would want to provide most parking on the side of the street,
All right.
where maybe before there was no parking.
Okay.
You're starting to see this in Bloomington.
Yeah.
If you have to have
True.
parking lots, the preferred method is to hide it underneath the building or behind it.
Good
The
idea.
objective is walkability, so you don't want parking lots to replace sidewalk space.
Exactly.
Number 4, new urbanism usually emphasizes more high-density development and better use of space.
Okay.
Though in a perfect world, most die-hard new urbanists would probably prefer small lot developments rather than massive football field size ones.
Oh,
In
okay.
short, they'd rather have it look like this
Oh.
and probably less like this. That's
well,
not to
okay.
say all new urbanists feel that way, but some do.
All right.
And lastly, a lot, but not all new urbanists have a respect for older styled architecture.
pretty
Many
cool.
of them prefer design frameworks that hark back to the pre-1920s and 1930s style architecture. Again, this isn't true for all new urbanists, but certainly all of them do draw their inspiration and basic city planning philosophy from that era.
Okay.
There is probably something I missed in that list, but those are some of the basics.
Probably did.
That may not help you like the new apartments going up
I still
any more
like
than before, but
Right.
at least you have some idea of the general philosophy and why you can't blame new urbanism for the style of the structures
I get it.
or the targeted audience of those structures.
Got it.
New urbanism simply doesn't determine either of those things.
Right.
Those were human choices, not philosophical ones.
Aha.
Let's take a look at some of the new structures in town that might fall into the new urbanist philosophical territory.
All right. Let's do it.
This is the new Blooming Foods on the southeast side of town.
Groovy.
It's built in an older style. It has shallow setback and parking in front.
Yep.
There is a small parking lot to the right, but it's not big enough to earn any penalty points.
Yeah. Okay.
The next building replaced a deep setback mini mall on College and 10th. It's an
Uh-huh.
apartment complex. While it does have shallow setback, it gets minus points for not being a mixed-use building. Not every building can be a mixed-use building, I suppose.
Minus
The
points.
parking is hidden underneath, which is nice, but it does want to give the illusion that it is not one large building, but several buildings on smaller lots.
Right.
We know, of course, that this is not the case. You'll
course.
see this illusion a lot with newer apartments.
Uh-huh.
The next structure is on Hillside and Henderson. From the Henderson point of view, it has a lot of things going for it.
Sure
It's
does.
slightly set back
Yep.
and built in kind of this old school 1920s style.
I like it.
It has a nice porch for outdoor eating and coffee sipping. From the Hillside point of view, we see some other things. First, and this is pretty common, we note the building would like to give the illusion that it is actually several buildings built on smaller lots,
Yeah,
kind of
hold
like our downtown.
Right.
But we know this is just one large building.
Of course.
On the plus side, it has shallow setback, a nice sidewalk for pedestrians, a big honking tree between the sidewalk and the street,
Big honk.
and parking alongside the road, making it a very pro-pedestrian setup.
It is. I'll walk there.
Now let's move to North College and 10th.
All right.
This structure also has shallow setback and a nice sidewalk with parking on the side.
Mhm.
And it's mixed use. There are stores and businesses on the bottom floor and apartment for the kiddos upstairs.
Okay.
But this building makes no attempt at pretending to be a bunch of smaller lots brought together to create a larger structure.
Sure
It just
does.
says, I'm huge, so deal with it. This building spans over what used to be 6 lots. Of course, it's not like they didn't build big buildings in the 1920s and 30s. They
did.
certainly did.
Okay.
This one was in Chicago.
Oh.
It's just that maybe the older one looks a little better, but
It
hey,
does.
that's just personal taste.
Well, I
Now,
like it better.
prior to the 1960s, 6 amazing houses once stood on this spot.
Wow.
All of them were demolished for development in the
What?
1950s and 60s,
Oh.
but nothing really ever came of it.
Oh.
Outside of an A&W restaurant, which later became a pet grooming store,
Oh.
and these lots pretty much all sat empty for nearly 50 years.
50
Way to
years?
go, city planners of the 1950s.
Wow.
Rah rah. I guess the demolish now and think later approach didn't work so well.
Nope.
No worries though, those empty lots became paved parking lots
Of
when the
course.
landowners failed to find developers or investors.
Oh.
Most of you might remember this space as it looked for nearly 50 years before the mega apartment became what it is today.
Parking lots. Lots of parking lots.
Now we find ourselves along North Morton, now known as the mega student apartment portion of town.
Oh, yeah.
This too follows many new urbanist guidelines.
Yep.
It's dense,
Yep.
has a sidewalk with parking alongside the street,
Yep.
and the parking is hidden.
Yeah.
Once again, we see a building that is pretending to be a multi-lot structure a la New York City or DC
Faker.
or Chicago, when in reality it's just one big giant structure.
Faker.
In an ideal purist new urbanist world,
Uh-huh.
these buildings might actually have really been developed on smaller lots,
Okay.
be more distinct, and have mixed use.
All right.
These buildings do not have businesses on the bottom floor.
Oh. Penalty.
We head to North Walnut and 10th. where this building was built on a lot that has been empty for some time. Formerly, it was a gas station. This new building has a sidewalk and shallow setback
Okay.
and hidden parking.
Okay.
But it's not mixed use. There is very little
Penalty.
protection for the pedestrian from the passing traffic. And again, it's giving the illusion that it's a multi-lot structure,
Sort of.
when in fact, it's just one.
Right. Got that.
This one on North Washington does the same thing.
Faker.
This apartment complex on South Dunn takes the illusion even further.
Oh.
Not only does the face of the building change multiple times,
Yeah.
it also changes heights. To
Yeah.
add to the effect, the ornate styles at the very top of the structures are also varied.
Faker.
This building wants us to think it is a big city, multi-lot row of structures,
We're not that
like
stupid.
something you might find in Washington, D.C.
Oh.
It isn't mixed use,
Nope.
but holds true to most of the other tenets of new urbanism.
Okay. I can see that.
Here on South Washington, we find a good example of old and new structures that follow the guidelines. We have multiple buildings on multiple lots with mixed use.
Aha.
We have a shallow setback, parking on the side of the street.
Coca-Cola.
In a
building.
perfect world, to add to the experience and make it even more pedestrian friendly, you might add some grass and some trees.
Yep.
Now, right down the street, we see the same setup, but another structure trying to be a multi-lot illusion.
Faker.
What about residential houses? Well, new urbanist philosophy can be followed there as well. Even further south on Dunn, we find one of Matt Press's developments. And unlike a lot of suburban sprawl neighborhood McMansion homes,
Right.
you'll note that 50% of these homes do not feature a garage. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Some houses feature the parking garage so much you wonder whether the house was built for the people or for the cars. These houses are built in the 1920s and the 1930s style.
Yep.
We have 4 squares and we have bungalows. There are parking garages for each house, but they're hidden behind in the alleyway. Remember when parking garages were in the back like this?
I do.
Many houses in Bloomington's older neighborhoods still use this setup today.
They do.
These houses have shallow setback, a nice sidewalk, and parking is on the side of the road,
Like it.
which also protects the pedestrian.
No squashy squashy.
Matt Press is one of our local new urbanist developers, and these are some of his newer structures on First and South Morton. One is a carriage-style building that now holds a law office, and the other is in the style of an old train depot.
Cool.
This is a mixed-use structure that will house a restaurant below and apartments up top.
All right.
Parking is below and behind the building.
Yep.
They hold true to all the new urbanist tenets and guidelines.
Right on. I like that.
Okay, I hope this tour was a little helpful, and I hope you
yeah.
understand now how a building can follow many or some of the new urbanist philosophies and still be a building you don't like architecturally, or you may even dislike the purpose of the building.
I get it.
Or maybe you don't like how giant they are.
No, I don't like that.
Those factors, however, are not determined by new urbanism.
Okay.
They are determined by the developer, city planners. And guess what? They could be decided by you as well,
Oh,
as
me?
all planning meetings and discussions are public meetings you
Oh.
can attend.
Great.
You could even add your voice to the discussion.
I'm ready.
Had enough of those mega apartments for the kiddos?
Yes.
Well, you have to get involved if you want the dynamic to change.
Okay.
I know getting involved is time consuming,
Sure
but if
is.
you truly want to have a voice, you can make a difference.
All right.
City planning shouldn't be something that is inflicted on a town
Right.
by any select group of people.
Exactly.
It is something that the local community should be involved in.
Get
Talk to your
involved.
city council member to find out how you can get more involved.
Right.
They welcome your thoughts and your participation.
Heck yeah.
All right, until later, it's been Bloomington Fading, Bloomington Then and Now Project. Later.